Hello? Hello, can you hear me? Hello, and welcome to Atomic Movie Reviews Film Society. I am your host, Atomicon Rex. Here we discuss films that have a narrative background and aliens, ghosts, robots, and monsters. So without further ado, let's just jump into it. Okay, so today I want to talk about we're gonna explore game theory. And it's gonna be, in my opinion, the best video game movie ever made, which is the first Mortal Kombat. So we'll touch on that. We'll touch on the video games, and then I'll give you my review on Mortal Kombat 2 that was just released in the theaters 2020 2026. Oh yeah, okay. I did say it right. Anyways, okay, so this is game theory, best video game movie adaptation, first Mortal Kombat. So the thing about Mortal Kombat, okay, basically back in the 90s, there were four major fighting video games. Okay, the first one was, which is obvious, Street Fighter. I think then Mortal Kombat came, right? So it goes Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat. It was a competition between Virtual Fighters and Tekken, but Tekken ended up really winning, and then Killer Instinct. Okay, so at least in my little circle, my little club, these were the four main fighting games. Okay, so Street Fighter was basically cartoons fighting. The thing about Mortal Kombat is they look like real people fighting, right? And you saw real blood hit the floor, and then of course the whole finish him at the end of it, and then you get to perform a fatality, right? With Tekken, you didn't really have anything like that. You had more of a like a technique or tactical fighting game where the characters were like 3D poly rendered, and they had a like a 3D arena that you could kind of move around, fight, and throw your enemies. Okay, but they weren't really like superpowers or anything. They were cool characters, but they weren't. It wasn't a projectile game. Okay, and then you had Killer Instinct, which was a higher resolution 3D poly type of video game that added combos, right? As opposed to Tekken. That wasn't, they didn't really have combos. Not like Killer Instinct. Okay, so those were the first four main fighting games I grew up with, right? So the whole thing about Mortal Kombat is that they have photorealistic digitized actors. Okay, and the mechanics were very much similar to Street Fighter. You're fighting one opponent on a 2D playing field, and after you basically reduce their bar to zero, their health bar to zero, you could perform a fatality or just let them drop. Okay, so that was the unique aspect when it came to the fighting mechanics of Mortal Kombat that the other games did not have. Still, none of the games still have anything close to a finishing aspect of the video game like Mortal Kombat. Okay, so Mortal Kombat was inspired um, by films like, I think the main film they even referenced it in the last movie was Big Trouble in Little China. He got a couple of characters from there. He got Raiden from there. He got Shing Tsung from there. And I would argue he got Sonya Blade from there. I think Sonya Blade is the green eye blonde chick that gets basically abducted in the movie. And then Kano is a rip off Terminator, and Johnny Cage is a rip off Jean Luc Van Damme from Bloodsport. Okay, so they're all basically. So he probably had in his mind what it would look like for these characters to fight, for movie characters to fight. Like, I think that's ultimately what Mortal Kombat was going for. Okay, so let's talk about the fits, right? So I want to talk about the first three games. I want to focus on the first three games because after the third Mortal Kombat game, I basically quit playing. I mean, I hated that run mechanic on that video game so much that I just did not like playing the game. And what basically the run mechanics in the video games in the Mortal Kombat 3 video game went like this. You didn't have free flowing combos like every other fighting game on this planet. You had to initiate a preset combination code for the combos on top of the preset combination that you had to use for the fatality. Okay, so you had to basically perform two fatalities in one fighting 3 minute fighting round. And it was just too much. And then you had to hit the run button. You had to hit an extra run button to make them run. Okay, and then hit the combo. And then remember the fatality at the end of the fight, right? And plug that combo in. Okay, so the mechanics were just horrible in that game. Okay, and then they went when they went to the 3D poly. I was already upset with them stealing the whole run button combo thing because I felt that they stole that IP from Killer Instinct. Okay, so I was already upset with that. But then when they went 3D, that was a step too far. That was a step too far for me, and I completely checked out. Especially when they had swords and different stances. I was like, this is just Mortal Kombat. This is Soul Calibur with Mortal Kombat characters. That's basically what all it is. And so I didn't pick up Mortal Kombat again until Mortal Kombat versus DC, which is probably another IP that they stole. Where did they steal? They probably stole that from Soul Calibur, because Soul Calibur would have guest appearances by like Spawn and Vader and all of that. Any character that had like a weapon, they would sponsor them in one of their video games. Depending on if you had an Xbox or PlayStation, you got different types of characters. Well, Mortal Kombat ends up doing that and like goes ham with it, right? And that's fine. Like I'm not knocking anybody for coming up with new ideas and keeping things fresh. I like the fact that they went with more movie monsters, Freddy Krueger, Jason, all of that. I don't mind all of that. Okay, I just mind that they didn't make it real, photorealistic. That's my only pet peeve, and it's going to pepper this whole entire podcast. Okay, anyways, back to the ninja fits. Okay, so the first Mortal Kombat, the ninja fits were fire. Absolute fire. They look like real ninjas. Even their stance, the way they walk, the way they fought, they fought like real ninjas. Not that I know what a real ninja is, but I would imagine that they fought like that. Okay, and then Mortal Kombat 2 came, which I liked it. I believe that it was a superior game. Okay, was I really big on the ninja outfits? No, I felt that it was a cross between motocross and Mortal Kombat. Like when I saw the ninjas in Mortal Kombat 2, I was like, well, I guess the guy's into motorcycles because they look like they have pads for somebody who's rides motorcycles. So dirt bikes, I should say, not just regular motorcycles, just dirt bikes. So they look like padding from a dirt bike, and he just sprayed them blue and yellow to match the characters. And then in Mortal Kombat 3, not only did they take out the main mascot character Scorpion, okay, and then what they really did is they made Scorpion a robot and gave him a net, but they didn't call him Scorpion. They called him Cyrax or some shit. Okay, but we want Scorpion. We don't want no. We want Scorpion. Okay, and so they took him out the game completely, and there was no secret character. You couldn't put a code in. You couldn't do anything like that. So like these things, like in my opinion, really hurt the brand. Okay, and then they unmask Sub Zero. Okay, so they unmask Sub Zero and they give him this weird looking scar across his eye. And the dude's like some white dude from Boston. He's not even like an Asian ninja guy. He's like this dude from Boston who's now, the second main character in Mortal Kombat, who's supposed to be a ninja. Okay, didn't like that. Nobody liked the stupid striker cop guy. Like they just dropped the ball on Mortal Kombat 3. Really, really bad. Okay, all right. That being said, let's touch on the lore of Mortal Kombat a little bit. Okay, so basically, what the lore runs is that you got these multiple realms battling for dominion, right? Okay, but the Elder Gods made it put rules in place. So, like, it didn't really matter. It wasn't determined by the size of your army, but by the skill of the champion that you choose, right? And so the gods kind of set it up. They wanted to make it almost impossible for one realm to conquer another realm. So they made it so you have to win 10 consecutive battles in a row in order to take over the realm. Okay. This is where Mortal Kombat falls into place. We're on our like ninth battle, and if we lose this battle, Shao Kahn is going to invade, basically, right? And so that's basically the lore. Okay, there's nothing wrong with the lore. I can't really say anything about it. My only issue is not really with the lore, but how they made changes to each game. Okay, so basically, how it plays out, at least this is generally how it played out, is that the main boss in the previous game becomes a playable character in the next game. Now, of course, you got to nerf them down a little bit. They're not as powerful as the boss, but they're usually playable, right? So when it came to Mortal Kombat, Shang Tsung became a playable character in Mortal Kombat 2, and Shao Kahn became the main bad guy, right? Now, what they should have did on Mortal Kombat 3 is make Shao Kahn a playable character and bring in like an elder god or a god like Raiden and make him the bad guy. But they didn't do that. They just made Shao Kahn another, the main bad again in part 3. Okay. And so I don't know. I feel like they kind of dropped the ball on that. I wish it would have did something a little more, evolve the lore a little bit more. I mean, I guess they did when it came to Mortal Kombat 4, 5, and 6, but at that point, I already checked out. So that being said, another one of my issues is that Mortal Kombat seems to steal IP from every other fighting game, where the other fighting games don't steal IP from them. Now, I don't know whatever happened to Killer Instinct. Okay, they had promised, they just fell off. Okay, I mean, I can't even think of. I mean, I guess they don't really have a good lore. I don't know what the story really is. I couldn't tell you who the main character is in Killer Instinct, but the gameplay is fire. That gameplay was fire. Um, but they stole Mortal Kombat stole the little combination thing. I talked about how they stole from Soul Calibur the knives and the weapons and the different stances and the guest characters. Okay, so when Street Fighter went to the whole 3D realm and they had their little, they had a couple games that were 3D rendered poly um, angle. I don't even know what the word is, but I know it's poly. Um, they got out of that real quick, okay, because the mechanics from a 3D game doesn't really fit the whole Street Fighter 2D game, because people want to throw fireballs and stuff and they want to throw projectiles, and it's harder to do that for a 3D game. It doesn't really sit right. So I wouldn't really make it too much of a big deal when it comes to these video games. I would just manage risk incrementally. You have your first video game, right? You put it out. You got your 8 main characters. You just say 3 are good, 3 are bad, 2 are neutral. Okay. The next game, you make the main bad guy a playable character. Okay. Or if there's like a couple main bad guys, there's usually two or more. You make them playable characters. Okay. You add one good guy to the roster. You add one bad guy to the roster. Maybe throw in a secret character. Doesn't always have to be a ninja. That's kind of lazy. Okay. And then rinse and repeat. That's all you got to do. You don't need to change the mechanics. You don't need to change the graphics. Should you enhance the graphics? Sure. Okay. They should be more realistic. But going back to, I feel like Mortal Kombat 4, 5, and 6 that they took a step back because they didn't master the 3D rendering like Tekken did and Virtual Fighters. They hadn't mastered that yet. Okay, they just wanted to copy. Okay, and they made an inferior game by copying other games and not sticking to their roots, not sticking to the photorealistic ideas. They could have made it just what I would have did. Okay, is I would have went the whole Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle route. Okay, if you look at the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle genre games, it's really not part one, part two, part three. They're really themes. Okay, so you have Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles take Manhattan, or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in space. Okay, they're different themes, and that's what I would have did with the Mortal Kombat. There would have been a 2 or 3 or 4. There would have been Mortal Kombat Outworld. Okay, I don't know where they got this Deadly Alliance, and I mean the titles for some of these games are just stupid. Then the next game would have been the Neither realm. Okay, I would have put them in different realms, and the bad guys, the main bad guys, would have been connected to the different realms, and that way you don't even have to make him a playable character in the next game. Like once you leave that realm or defeat that realm, you defeat the bad guy who's ever in that realm, and that's what I would have did with that. But I would have always kept the same main 8 characters and just adapt. Okay. And then so when you came to, Mortal Kombat versus DC, that could have been um, a whole theme. And then I would have done Mortal Kombat versus Hollywood. And that would have been a theme. You could have thrown Terminator in there and all of the guest characters, okay? And then go to another completely theme. I don't know, Mortal Kombat versus Disney. I'm not being serious, but that's that's the mindset that I had when approaching these video games. I think they should have been a Mortal Kombat 1 and 2, and even possibly 3, just to clean it up. But then after that, just make them based on themes. That's how I would have did mine. Pause. Okay, can you hear me? On pause. All right, so let's continue on to the movie review. Mortal Kombat 2. Um, I think that's just the title of the movie. Came out in 2026. Not sure who the director of the film is, but the lead actor is something Carbon. The dude from The Boys. The scruff, rough looking dude. Okay. So, okay. So, what are my narrative predictions? Okay. And I'm going by what I saw in the trailer. So I saw this one cutscene where Shang Tsung was basically absorbing Johnny Cage's soul, right? And so I thought my plot prediction was that Johnny Cage dies, or that through that interaction with him fighting Shang Tsung, his superpower is unleashed. His little green uppercut orb thing and his shadow kick. I was wrong. I was wrong about my plot prediction. He did not die. Okay. Second, genre. I would put this in the fantasy realm. Um, Slash, yeah, I mean, I guess there are horror elements to it. I wouldn't call it a horror movie, but there's definitely horror elements to it, but it's certainly fantasy. Cinematography, it's live action with CGI peppered through the entire thing. Original work is based on a video game, specifically Mortal Kombat 1 and 2, with, I don't know the whole lore, but I'm going to say Mortal Kombat 4 um, elements from that was the original work. Set design, a lot of it were practical effects. Like there were a bunch of stages, fight stages, okay, and there was a little bit of CGI in the background, but overall the set design was pretty solid. I did really like it. TV tropes, plot conventions did I notice in the film? What plot conventions did I notice in the film? We'll come back to that. I don't think I really thought about that. Okay, so the hero of the story, it's marketed as Johnny Cage, but the real hero is why do I want to say Luke Kane? Is that his name? Is Luke Kane his name? Hold on. Yeah, sorry, I didn't write any notes down. Yeah, the main character is Luke Kane. Um, like I believe a lot of the characters are based on movies. Okay, so Luke Kane is based on, I want to say Bruce Lee. I'm pretty sure. Johnny Cage is John Claude Van Damme. Raiden is this guy from Big Trouble Little China, and so is Song Xing. I think he's from Big Trouble Little China too. And I would argue Sona Blade is from the same movie. I think she's the blonde, um, green-eyed girl in that movie. I think they're, and then Kano is inspired by Terminator. And who else am I missing? I mean, I guess the ninjas are just ninjas. And yeah, I think that's it. Okay, so Goro would be obviously some Hindu god. He's based off some Hindu god. I guess there hasn't really been a movie depicted with that character, so he's probably not based on the movie. So the villain in the movie is Shao Kahn. He's really, really OP. I think they made him way too OP in this one. Damsel in distress. You can argue Princess Katana, but I don't know. No, maybe not. I don't think there is a damsel in distress in this one, actually. I think most of them are all sidekicks. All the women are basically weapons themselves. Who would be the sidekick? So I would argue Luke Kane is the main character of the film, and Johnny Cage would be the sidekick. That I would argue that. Weapons. Jade had a weapon, and who else? Shao Kahn had a weapon. Jade had her stick, her little magical stick. There were a couple good weapons in there. Shao Kahn had this big old hammer. Um, what other weapons did they have? I think that's it. Actually, I don't. If it's attached to their bodies, I don't consider it really a weapon. That's more of a, you know, it's more of an upgrade than anything. Mode of transportation. They really just teleported. So Raiden had these jump rooms or jump doors, I like to call them. That's what people in the the UFO community would call them. You just walk through a door and then boom, you're on planet Mars. Okay, I've heard that. But basically, that's how they got around through various portals, and they would teleport to various dimensions. At least Raiden could teleport them through various dimensions. Acting. Did the actors seem believable? Yeah, they all brought their A game. I don't think anybody really took me off. There wasn't no one really bland. I mean, I'm not sure. I wasn't really too impressed with Jade. Okay, I don't know what it is. I just can't put my finger on it, but not really too impressed with her. But apart from that, all the actors seem believable to me. What was the cultural impact of the movie? Did it break any new ground? Okay, so the cultural impact of Mortal Kombat, the first movie, is that it's the first video game movie that was a success and kept true to the material. And it's been held that all the way up to this point. So like there's been kind of a video game curse after since Mortal Kombat. Like every other video game movie has basically bombed, um, or been so far from the material. It's hardly recognizable. Maybe Resident Evil, the first one, was a solid contender, but it wasn't a better adaptation than Mortal Kombat. Okay, but that wasn't a bad video game adaptation either. Um, and then Sonic came around, and that kind of broke the spell. And then the video game movies have been fundamentally solid since. I haven't seen them all. There's been a couple of letdowns, but all the video game movies since Sonic the Hedgehog have been pretty good. That being said, did it break any new ground? Um, no, I wouldn't say. Do I would I compare it? How does it measure up to the first one? I still think the first one is a little better. Okay, because I do have minor gripes with this movie. Okay, like is it theater worthy? Yes. Okay, you should watch it. You're probably gonna buy it, and because you buy this one, you're gonna buy the first one. Okay, just cause, right? But is it a superior movie to the first original Mortal Kombat? No, I don't think so. One, I think the ninjas look like samurais. They don't look like ninjas. Okay. Two, they try to make Scorpion. Scorpion is the mascot of Mortal Kombat. It's just because he's the coolest and favorite character, right? But he's still an evil hellspawn. Okay. And there's been this whole pitch to make him this heroic ninja. Okay. And it's kind of like depicted in this movie where Scorpion is in hell, okay, but he's surrounded by cherry blossoms and stuff like that, right? And I get the actor who's playing Scorpion is really old and he's about to go out, so you have to have the whole Japanese theme going on. You got to have something with cherry blossoms. I get it, okay, but he's in hell. Okay, there's no heavenly space. He doesn't get that. He's a hellspawn. He's a demon. Scorpion is a demon, and he should always be depicted that way. I think they kind of dropped the ball on that. I didn't like what happened to Raiden. That was kind of weird, and just minor gripes. But overall, I'll give the movie a solid B. Atomicon Rex does recommend this bad boy. See you guys later. Bye bye.